Welcome. Nope, try. Welcome back to the PRFFP podcast, the podcast where we break down and get a look behind the scenes and into the minds of the directors of the Party Room Film Festival. For this episode, I have the one and only Mitchell Judy. Mitchell, how are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Man, I am just hanging out. I'm so excited for this interview. Been thinking about it all day. It was great.
Yeah, me too. I was honored because I think like everybody else has been listening. I'm like, oh, I wonder who's gonna be next. Of like when you listen, you're like, I'll be down the road somewhere. And then you message me and I'm just like, oh, I guess I'm next. What do I do?
Yeah, I want to try and get everybody because everybody did an amazing job this year. And truth be told, this was just a way for me to learn how to edit audio. The 2021 intro video comes out. The festival council gives us the rules, the categories, and the stipulations. What was your original reaction to your word and your category?
I liked the word. I liked the aspect of having a word that we had to use. Because I mean, after the first year, we got the genres we were supposed to use. And I liked having the genre I had because it was really flexible, but some genres, people made the genres really flexible, but others I feel like had a little more freedom, like mine being silent. I had a lot of freedom within that, and mine ended up being a horror film, which when I set out, I'm like, I don't know if this is supposed to be a horror film, but it is. So when we saw that we had words, I'm like, oh, can be like extremely flexible with this. And then I saw meaningless. And I think my initial reaction was, well, what do I do? What do I do with this? But it was really cool because I saw that. And I think it was by that night, after like seeing it that morning, by that night, I think I had an idea. I had an idea. I was really excited about it. We had people that we had to use in the film. I had Tanner. And I think I texted Tanner like the next day. I'm like, I have this idea. It's fantastic. Here's what I want to have you doing. I'm super excited about it. And it was all guns blazing. That idea.
So,
That's not what ended up happening, but I was really excited for that first couple weeks when I had that idea.
So you had this light bulb moment almost immediately compared to basically every other person in the film festival who takes 5 weeks to just start thinking about it. I just got done interviewing Trevor and he said, yeah, I wasn't going to think about it until 5 weeks later. He said that was his strategy this year. But so you had a light bulb moment almost immediately, and that's great. This is part of the reason I was so excited about this episode is because I want to know what happened. What was the original idea for this? Because didn't you say it was going to be a comedy originally?
It was going to, so I had the idea instantly because after the first year, I was really excited. I'm like, oh man, we get to do this again. I was talking to Sam for quite a while. Sam knew what he was going to do like for a long time going into this. I already knew what he was kind of thinking. And we both talked about, oh, what are we going to do? What's this going to be? So we get the requirements and immediately I'm like, okay, last year I may have went a little far with some of the stuff in my film. So naturally in my head, we get this and I start thinking about this idea. I'm like, okay, how far can I go now? Where can I go with this next? What's the next line that I can cross?
Okay.
And in retrospect, after the year we just had, I think Andrew kind of took this from me, but mine was blood. I'm like, blood. That seems like a good line that we can cross. So I came like, we got meaningless. And for some reason in my head, I'm like, I want to do something like Saw. Like, how can I make Saw, but make it funny? Like, I want this to be funny. I don't want it to be serious, but I also want it to be ridiculous and just as over the top and cringy as it can be. So I came up with this idea called Life is Meaningless. And the idea, it was going to be kind of like a Saw type movie, but just the way that people died and the things that happened, it was just going to be just utterly ridiculous. We had just gone through 2020 and for some reason, I'm like, well, who's going to be the killer? I'm like, a plague doctor. That's current. That's scary. And that'll look really cool on film.
Yes.
So at the time, one of Holly's friends was dating a guy who I think he was like 6'7" or 6'8". He was huge. And I
Wow.
knew I was going to be using Holly and some of her other friends who were very short. And I'm like, he's going to look like a monster next to these people. And that's what I want. So I sat there, I'm like, okay, what can I flesh out for this idea? So the idea for Life is Meaningless was, okay, we're going to focus on like 4 different people, and we're just going to see snippets of their life where they're fed up with a situation and they utter the phrase, life is meaningless.
Mm-hmm.
And instantly they pass out or something. They get transported to this like Hunger Games style arena, aka the pond in the woods behind the house I lived in, incidentally, where we're actually going to have our wedding at. So
beautiful.
So that's the vibe. Saw. so they get transported to this place, and there is this plague doctor that was almost going to be spirit like, who's just going to be like hopping and warping around. And these people, I'm just like, they're not going to know what's going on. They see each other. I'm like, these people just have to die in the most amazing way. But now where Tanner came into all of this, because Tanner lives up in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
Tanner lives up in Cleveland. And I'm like, he can't be here, but he can be on screen. So he was going to be like the jigsaw. He was going to be coming around. So I think the idea that I had is the plague doctor was going to walk up and he was going to like whip up his hand with a cell phone, and Tanner was going to be on it. And Tanner was going to be the mastermind behind all of this.
Yeah.
So that was the initial idea. And then I sat there, I'm like, okay, I want to do something unexpected. I want to do something very unexpected to end this.
Mm-hmm.
Very much like comes out like your film with the effects that you did, everything coming from 2020 to 2021, your film was the definition of unexpected. People were like, what's this? Where's this coming from? And
absolutely, yeah.
The unexpectedness was something I'm like, I feel like if I have a shot at something this year, I need to come out of nowhere with something. So I hadn't, Tanner's never heard this idea. So this is going to be a shock to him, but what I was thinking of, I'm like, how do I end this? I have the premise. Tanner, I was going to see if there was a day I could get him down there, and all of a sudden, Tanner was going to end up killing his own creature, the plague doctor.
Okay.
And he was going to be the mastermind behind this whole thing. He's like, I'm in control of everything. And I'm like, perfect. Tanner is the big bad. It's going to be crazy. Like, oh, we actually get to see Tanner. I had this idea of him doing this evil maniacal laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, there we go. There's the film. I had one other idea that I even told Sam about, that I'm like, I don't think this is possible, but if it is, people would freak out.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the people who listen to this are Party Room Film Festival people.
Oh,
so,
yeah, our audience is like 10 people. So,
yes. So this will resonate with everybody. I had a dream, not like in my sleep, just I had this dream one day thinking, I'm like, you know what would be crazy? If I did a double swerve, Tanner pops out and he kills this guy. He's the big bad, and boom, I could get Tanner there. So what if I go for the ultimate double swerve and somebody kills Tanner, and he is the ultimate big bad? And I don't know why, but for some reason, the image in my head was Devin Bowden.
oh my God, that would have gotten the biggest pop of. Oh my God.
I know. I follow him still on Instagram. I follow him. I comment on some of his things. So I'm like, I still have relative contact with this person. I have no idea if I could even get him down here. The vision in my head was Tanner kills 6'8" tall plague doctor, and Tanner's maniacal laughing, and then you just hear a gunshot. Tanner falls, and the camera just zooms in on Devin, and he says, "Debo's back" in black.
Oh my God. Oh no, I dropped my microphone. Oh no.
That was
my God.
That was the ultimate vision of what I wanted to do. It was the ultimate vision.
Oh my God. No, I don't want to move on from this. I want to stay on this real quick. That would be so perfect. The Debo's backline, that is the ultimate for this group of guys that was on the Hall in 2016. That is the ultimate nerd Easter egg. Like that is the perfect. Oh,
I wanted to have that Easter egg because I sat there. I'm like, that's what for the first month, I dedicated that entire first month to just being like, okay, what do I need to do? How can I do this? What's this going to be like? I mean, when I say dedicate this, I'm just in my brain thinking about this, jotting down ideas on a pad, not shooting anything because I'm like, I'll have a whole other month to shoot this. Like this is just getting all my logistics together.
Flush everything out, storyboard it, figure it out.
I had some ideas. I'm like, again, part of this was what line can I cross? I want this to be very bloody. I was like looking into how can I do very realistic special effects. I love the movie Sweeney Todd, and I was watching behind the scenes of Sweeney Todd, how they did the neck slashing effects and everything. I sat there, I'm like, I want to make some, like, I sat there, I'm like, I want to like cut somebody's neck and people like throw up because of how realistic it looks. Like that was like, these were the ideas I was having. I'm like, if somebody doesn't throw up or walk out of this, I'm like, I haven't succeeded.
So you took the Paul Sigler and Andrew King approach initially for this year. Okay.
Exactly. That was the original idea, and I dedicated a lot of time to this. And skip ahead real quick. The reason it didn't end up happening was the biggest crucial part to the film was the plague doctor thing. And as you know, things go with relationships, they fizzle out. And towards the end of that month, the guy who I had, this giant guy, was no longer in the picture. So that just started this little bit of this spiral of, I can't do that. Okay, I can't do that. I actually switched jobs at the time, and I was moving into something else I was doing on my own. And it just started this storm of, okay, that's falling through. I can't do this. I can't do this. And the idea ultimately got to a point, I'm like, I have to scrap this because I don't have enough time to do everything I want. And I'm like, I love this idea, and I don't want to do it if it can't be how I picture it, because if it's not how I picture it, it's just not going to have the effect that I want.
If it's not perfect, it's not worth it.
Which I know,
I agree.
I feel like it kind of goes against kind of the spirit of the Party Room Film Festival, but I had this vision. I'm like, this could be the ultimate Party Room Film Festival film, but especially coming from somebody like me who just went the opposite and did a completely serious film last year. I'm like, if I'm going to do this, I want to do this like full on. And I'm like, I can't have a short plague doctor. I don't know who would even do that. Getting all this, everything kind of fizzled. And I'm like, I think it was like the first week of the second month. And I'm like, I gotta transition. So that was ultimately what I had originally planned. I had that idea that night after we got the rules. I had that idea that night. All the Devon stuff, I think I thought of that like a week later. But I mean, I had this idea pretty much fleshed out. I think a long while ago, I actually shared the poster that I had in the Facebook group.
Yes, like I remember the poster.
Yeah, I had the poster and everything. I was super excited, and I'm just kind of like, what could have been?
Yeah, no, that would have been, I don't know if it would have won because Rotten Roommate just was that good this year. It definitely would have been a top tier film. Yeah, it was all, and looking back, I'm like, I was putting so much stock into the ending that I'm like, looking back, I don't know if the substance would have been there to compete with something like what Aaron accomplished. I mean, I would argue that probably would have beaten the Meaningless Time Travel, my film this year. I think it would have, especially with that Luke, I am your father twist that only you and Tanner and Devin Bowden know about. Like that is. Yeah, nobody would have known. Nobody would have known. But again, with your film, all the stuff that you did,
again, I don't think anybody was expecting that from a Jacob McGlone film at the time. And like seeing it going forward now, I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, now how do we not expect that from a Jacob McGlone film?
Yeah, I'm never gonna top it, and that's fine.
I think you could. I think you could. I have faith that you could.
I appreciate it. I'm gonna let you down, but I appreciate it.
I still think with that film, I still think I would have come in an honorable, probably third. I still think you guys both would have had the first and the second.
I guess that's just something we'll never know, huh?
No. I thought about, I'm like, do I hold on to this idea? Do I tell? But I'm like, no, I'm just going to get out there because I want people to know about it. And I'm just going to go in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. I will say the only bummer about you telling me that right now is that you don't attempt it next year or the year after that. Do you think this will ever come back?
I mean, I'd like to make it. I mean, we could have 1 year we just throw rejected ideas into a bucket and be like, okay, here's the rejected idea, here's the plot, here's the story, interpret it how you will. But I mean, that's the only way that I see it coming back, because looking forward, I'm kind of like, I have other things that I want to do. Like that was very much a thing for one time.
I gotcha. Well, let's switch tracks from what might have been to what was. So relationship falls apart, film falls apart because your casting is getting all out of whack. You end up switching from life is meaningless to life is not meaningless. Quite the juxtaposition, right?
Yes, one word. I know.
It's funny, I already have the question, what was the original idea and what changed? And that's what I'm asking everybody. And it's just really funny how that question really is meant for you. But I just want to know about, you said a little bit about like, okay, she's not a part of it. Let me kill off this character. Tell me a little bit about this transition that you did and why we got the product that we did.
When you say 180, I went 180. I had that idea, this gritty saw, like bloody thing. And for a while, I didn't know what I was going to do. I still wanted to do something big, but I didn't have the time. I went through a couple ideas, but I sat there. I'm like, life is meaningless. Life is not meaningless. So I 180'd into, I want to do something funny, but inspirational. So I started like thinking about, I'm like, okay, what if I make a film about a YouTuber who is navigating her love life? Okay. Again, very 180. Girl navigating her love life, kind of that classic story of, hey, I tried this relationship, didn't work. Here's why it didn't work. And these people are just complete losers. I was so excited about, Tanner's role in it, because I was going to have, oh God, what did I have him being? I think he was like the heir to a broccoli making company. He was like the heir to a broccoli fortune or something. And he was just like, he was going to be on a date and he was just only going to talk in like broccoli facts and broccoli puns. And it's going to be the most awkward thing. It was going to be so awkward that I'm like, they have to laugh because this is so awkward. But just a lot of stuff like that, really ridiculous dates. That was the idea. Again, 180. So what ended up happening, why it transitioned, we did the first round of filming, and I had two other film days set. So Stephanie, Holly's sister, who is the main girl, well, one of the two main girls in the film. So after the first day of filming, we're coming up on the next day. She gets sick. She has strep throat. I think we found this out like 9 o'clock at night before filming the second day. And I'm just like, oh my God.
This is the girl who plays Annie.
Correct. Yes. Okay. So I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So we ended up canceling an entire day of filming because I had no idea. And I'm like, I have 1 day of filming left and I don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm sitting here trying to be like, I'm like, I can't fit all the stuff I need to still do into 1 day. So I just sat here. I'm just like, how do I switch this? I was debating back and forth. I'm like, do I change again? Do I come up with a whole nother film? I don't want to, because I've already shot stuff. I've already had people take time out of their schedules to come shoot with me. Do I change again? I'm like, I got to salvage what I use, but I got to pivot. And I sat there. I'm like, she's dead. That's it. That's the solution. She dies. She died. Now how do I kill her? How does she die? Do I show her die? And I just sat there. I'm like, what if she's already dead? And everybody's talking about her. So that became the idea. What?
Can I say one thing?
Yes, you can.
You go as soon as he decided he was going to do that. He's like, I figured out what I'm going to do with Stephanie. And he goes, I'm going to kill her. And I'm like, you're going to have to elaborate because I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yes. But yeah, so I ended up killing her off in the film, and everything you saw on the screen, everything everybody says, I wrote that in like 2 hours, and I was still editing and writing it as we were shooting some of the interview stuff. I didn't like some of the stuff I wrote, and I rewrote it as we were filming. So it was the definition of an overnight turnaround.
Absolutely. The footage of Annie that we do see, sorry, her real name is
Stephanie.
So the footage of Stephanie that we do see is from that original day of filming.
Yes. All the stuff that you see of Stephanie, her interview part at the very beginning, that is from the first day of filming, which was only really supposed to be like the background. And there was more that I wrote for her that I ended up scrapping because she was going to be like narrating all of this. And then there's a scene later when Holly's character is talking on screen. All the stuff on the laptop was all of the footage that I had already shot that I recycled because I wanted to use it in some way.
Yeah, it really is a shame that you went from like just crazy, then had to switch, and then had to switch again.
Yeah, it was, and I knew I was already a pet peeve to Andrew. I'm like, I'm already past. I'm like, I guess since I'm a day or two past, I can take a couple days to figure this out. I still hadn't completely gotten over having to let go the original film idea too, because I loved it. So
I do too.
So I was sitting there, I'm like, you know what? I don't care if I'm past the due date. I'm going to get something in. And I at least want it to be good, passable. If I'm going to turn it in.
So if you're going from like crazy, like super crazy comedy to uncomfortable comedy, why was the next level serious, kind of sad story?
That's where I excel. I've mentioned this to Sam quite a bit. The reason my stuff tends to be serious is because I suck at coming up with funny stuff. Like I've tried writing comedies and I am bad at it. I am very bad. It is not funny. It is uncomfortable. And if it is funny, it ends up being curse heavy and really dirty. That's the only type of funny that I can write. And I'm like, I don't think people will appreciate this. So I'm just gonna not. So I come up with more serious stuff because that's what I do really well. I'm awful at being funny. I can be situationally funny. Like when me and Sam do our vlogs, if I'm on site and on the spot, I can roll out the jokes and the funny a mile a minute. But if I have to sit down and create something funny, it is awkward.
I gotcha. Now that we have seen like 2 years of a similar path, is this going to be the tone of your films from now on, or is there a change coming? Do you like your role as the serious filmmaker?
I go back and forth. Sometimes I really like being that guy because I'm like, there's a lot of serious, there's a lot of funny and goofy and crazy in this film festival because that's what the festival is designed for. I'm like, I feel like I like my role sometimes because I'm like, I feel like there needs to be that one person who does something like that to break it up a little bit. So in that respect, I like it. But there are also times where I'll be watching the films and I sit there and I'm like, man, I wish I did something funny like that. I wish I could do something like that, which I know I'm capable of, but I kind of flip-flop back and forth because when I make my serious stuff, I'm sitting there, I'm like, I know I can do this really well, but also doing the other stuff to me, in my mind, I'm like, it's kind of a challenge and I'm kind of intrigued by that. I'm like, can I do this? Because again, for a long time, I've blocked myself off from doing anything funny because again, I'm awful at it, but I sit and I watch the films back. And I'm like, surely I can do something like this going forward. Oh, I think it's inevitable that I will end up churning out something funny. I think that's inevitable. When is that next year? I don't know. Do I know what I'm going to do next year? I have 2 ideas.
Yeah, do you have any plans or concepts that you're playing with for next
Yes.
year?
I have I don't have plans. Nothing is set in stone. I have thought about like, what would I like to do? I think I have 3 different things that I'm like, I would like to do this. Really 2 that I think are feasible. 1 that I'm kind of like, that's a stretch. But one path is definitely serious. 1 is funnier. I don't know which one I will end up doing, but I do have ideas. I joked to Sam literally, I think just yesterday, I just joked to Sam. I'm like, so I was listening to the podcast again, and I had this idea pop in my head. I'm like, I hope that I get assigned Jacob, because I think that would be perfect for him, because that would be ridiculous. If I do something funny, I'm just sitting there, I'm like, somebody's going to be offended by something I do. If I go funny, I know I'm going to offend somebody.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, you are the only nerd with a rule named after them. How does that feel?
At first, I didn't know how to feel about it, because it kind of caught me off guard, but I consider it an honor. I didn't set out to get a rule named after me. I watched my film back yesterday, and I want to get ready for this, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, I like this. I'm sitting there, I'm like, is the rule justified? Yeah, but I'm happy about having that rule. I don't want to be the inspiration for the next rule.
Okay. I'm sure Andrew is very happy about that.
Well, now I will say, do I think I have a high chance of getting the next rule instituted? Yes. Yes, I do. But I'm not, despite what people in the Facebook group may be saying on there, I am not going to set out to create a new rule. It has, okay. If I'm going to set a new rule for something that upsets somebody, it's got to be organic.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're all simultaneously egging you on, but we also don't want it to happen whenever we're talking about like, yeah, Mitchell, you should just do a bunch of swearing in your next one, or like we don't actually want it to happen.
No.
I don't have a rule named after me, so
maybe that's your calling. Maybe you should be the next one.
Maybe.
You were the special effects pioneer of this past year. Maybe next year you could pioneer a rule.
All right, we will see on that one. I have a question for Holly if she wants to.
Holly,
I'm coming. Yes,
there she is.
Holly, so you got to know a lot of the nerd group through their films this year, through the festival. Tell me what that was like for you.
I thought it was, so when he told me about this initially, I was kind of confused because I wasn't sure what it was all about and everything, because we weren't together the first time that you guys had the Party Room Film Festival. So I didn't know too much about it. And then when I went, I saw all of the films, and I think it's really cool to see kind of where there's some people who have more of the serious films, and then there's others that really like take it to the next level. I think like with the Rotten Roommate film was excellent. I felt like your film was really great to watch. I think they all were really great to watch, just for different reasons. And it was really fun, because I'm like, this is like a cool way to get to know who these people are, because it's kind of like a window in to personalities and stuff. And I'm the new girl coming in, so like I didn't know anyone, and it was just a cool, fun experience. And ever since then, like he's been tossing around ideas, like saying like, I'm thinking about doing this for next year, and he's come up with like 10 or 11 ideas already. But it was just exciting. I think it was a cool experience for me to just kind of see into some of these great people that he talks about all the time.
Are you wanting to get more involved with Mitchell's films in the coming years?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I had so much fun kind of watching the film that he made last year evolve so much. Like, I know it was very frustrating for him because he had like this whole vision, and it just didn't come to fruition the way he wanted it to. And I just kind of got to have fun though, to watch him like film all of this stuff and kind of change it on a dime the way he did, which I think what he did with what he had to work with, I think ended up working very well for what he made. But I don't know, I'm excited to like kind of participate a little bit more. Yes, I was had to be a little bit somber in the picture in the film that I was in, but I think it'll be cool. I told him I want to die at some point just because I think that would be fun.
Yep.
I just want to die in a film one time, and then after that, like
every time I come up with an idea, the first thing she says, she doesn't ask me anything about it. She's like, what do I do in it? That's the first thing she says anytime I float a little idea. Like I said, there's only 2 ideas that I have that are like serious considerations, but I come up with ideas all the time, and she's like, okay, so what do I do in it? Yeah, she wants to die, and I sat there, I'm like, I can do that.
I am very excited for your participation in the future, Holly.
And I will
welcome to the nerd family.
Thank you.
I will put a little side note, just fun factoid. The first Party Room Film Festival film she ever watched was End of the Bloodline.
Gotcha.
So that was like, I think this is a good way to understand what this is.
Absolutely. It is the pinnacle of it's the, what is it? It's the Voyager. It is the first one that really taught us what the Party Room Film Festival is about. I just have to ask for clarification. Holly, have you worn a nerd shirt?
I have not.
I don't own one.
What?
Yeah, the ones that I have from school don't fit anymore, and I've never gotten another one.
No, fair enough. Okay, well that's good, because Mitchell would be excommunicated. Bad.
I already was close to getting excommunicated because I cut the sleeves off of a shirt once. That was a thing.
Holly, what was your reaction to Mitchell's film last year? The one that incited the Mitchell Judy rule. I do want to know this. I'm sorry if this puts you in an awkward spot, Mitch.
No. Okay. So he told me about the rule. So before I saw the film at all, he told me about the rule, and I was like, I need to know why this rule came to be. I need to see the film. So I saw it, and I was not offended by it. It didn't really bother me, but I understood why people may have been a little bit concerned, but it didn't bother me really. But I guess I understand why the rule was instituted, because it's something that's very controversial, but I also think it's something that is definitely a you thing to do, is to just challenge, see how far he can push the envelope. So I wasn't shocked to see it per se, but it didn't offend me, but I understood how it could have offended other people.
Yeah, I don't know that it offended anybody necessarily. I think it was more like it went from kind of like the guys watching together to like, all right, now the wives are involved, and it's like, oh, this is weird to watch with the women of nerd too. Like, I think that was the main reason for the rule, because I remember everybody going, oh, Mitchell.
It is artistic.
Like I said, you're the artist. Oh man, I love you, buddy. I'm glad that we're doing this interview.
Of course.
Is there a algorithm or a perfect recipe for the perfect PRFF submission?
Is there an algorithm? Well, again, like kind of what I said, kind of like what I plan to do with Life is Meaningless. I think having something in it that's unexpected. Unexpected is, I think, key. Because I think in Andrew's podcast, he sat there and he's like, you need to get in front of these group of guys and show them something that they like, that blows them away. They haven't seen before and makes them be like, oh my gosh. And I feel like if you can do something unexpected, especially if it's funny and unexpected, I feel like that's something that clinches. Aaron Winarowski, kill a small dog. That was unexpected. And you were sitting there like, he's going to do it. He's going to do it. He's going to do it. I watched the film. He made it seem like he was going to do it. So your film, what part was it? The camera moving to all the different stages of you building the time machine That was the unexpected moment. Into the Bloodline, everything with Ellen. That was unexpected.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I really feel like honing into finding that one thing that's gonna knock people back a little bit and be like, oh, I'm intrigued. Or that's great. That's hilarious. I feel like I don't feel like there's an algorithm. I just feel like doing something that is unforgettable. I feel like that's the key. You have to make something stand out. I mean, I didn't win anything with it. I don't toot my own horn, but like the butt.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't win anything, rubbed people the wrong way, but you remember the film because you're like, yeah, it was the film with the butt in it. People are going to remember that film because there was a butt. Again, that is not the algorithm. Butts in films is not the algorithm to win. I'm key to being why that's not it. But doing something unexpected, making it memorable, I feel like that's the key to winning.
All right, well, we can go ahead and start wrapping it up here. Is there anyone you want to call out for this coming year, grudge match style? Not necessarily for like, I want to be in the same category and go against this person, but is there somebody you want to call out and be like, I'm going to beat you this year?
I don't know. My track record is not great, so I feel like that's tall talk for me. But I feel like I would have a lot of fun going head to head with Sam.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see that pairing.
Like, there's in my head, I'm sitting there, I'm like, I would either like to go head to head with Sam, or I would like to do a team film and film with Sam. But the reason I'd like to go head to head with him is because we've been roommates since day one at Asbury. That was 9 years ago. I sit there, I'm like, I have a good handle on the kind of stuff he does. I'm like, I think I can match that. And I could match that. I'm like, if I go head to head with Sam has straight up told me, he's like, next year you have to do something funny. I'm going to hold you to that. You're not allowed to do anything serious. Because I told him, I'm like, I'm thinking about doing funny. He's like, nope, you got to do it. So if I was head to head with him, I'm like, well, that's right there forcing me to do something funny. But I feel like we would have fun back and forth being like, oh, I'm doing this. I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to do something like this. Be like, I just think that would be a blast.
I would love to see that matchup. That's for sure. All right. Well, Mitch, thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you for sharing all these stories and whatnot.
Yeah. Thanks for just interviewing me, including me. The first 2 episodes of the podcast, I love the idea of doing the podcast. I love the idea of doing it. That first episode kind of came out of nowhere, and it was just kind of like, oh, I didn't know I needed this until it was here. I'm like, I need this now.
Yeah, man, it's been fun. And I'm glad that everybody's enjoying it. But yeah. All right. Well, this has been the PRFF podcast, and I'm just hanging out
with my family. Yes.
Mitch, come on.
That's my aesthetic. Letting all the nerds down.
That was so much worse than Andrew's.
Past and future. I'm where it ends.
There it is. Awesome.